Now in the past couple lessons we've been talking about bar chords, and we talked about the E-type bar chords that look like this, the A-type bar chords that look like this or like this. But those aren't the only kind. Those are just the most popular ones. There are also C-type chords. So let's say that we're playing a C major chord, which we learned early on. Let's pretend that we need to do it with these three smallest fingers, which will be a little bit tricky. And this is also part of the reason why it's not very common. But let's go ahead and move that position down. So the same way that we took this E chord and we sort of shifted down and added the index finger, we took the A chord and we shifted down and added the index finger. We can do the same thing with the C chord. We can actually do it with any of these chords down here, these open chords, but I'm just showing you the most common ones. So here we've got a C chord, and then let's pretend that we're having to press on this side of the nut. We don't actually have to because we've just got a regular C chord and it doesn't make a difference. But if we shift that down to, let's say, here, then we've got an E chord. Now, how did I know that it was an E chord? Remember in the other lesson with the A-type bar chords, we talked about wherever the finger was on the 5th string, whichever note we were at, that's what kind of chord it was. So in this situation, when we're playing a C chord, the pinky is on the note C. And so that's what kind of chord it is. So if we were to move it over to here, to the 5th fret, then we would have a D chord. To the 7th fret, we'd have an E chord, and so on. Now, you might say, well, but I thought that this was an E chord. Well, it is. Notice how they sound very similar. They have many of the same notes in common. Now, I mentioned the fact that you could take any of these chords down here and you could bar them. Now, some of the other ones that you could do, you could take a G chord, and you'd need to play it this way, and then you could slide it over to here, and if you can press down hard enough, maybe not, then you can get an A chord, or a B chord if we go down far enough. And you could also take this chord. You remember our D chord? That's most commonly done that way. You could take that and use your three smallest fingers and then bar, pretend that you're barring here, and then you could shift it on over. And so if we wanted to make this kind of chord, we could have an E chord. So there we go. So remember, any kind of chord that you can form down here, if you've got this extra finger, you could turn it into a bar chord, and you would just need to remember which note you're on the 5th string to make sure that you're ending up in the right spot. Now, another thing that people ask about with bar chords is, why are they so difficult? What makes it difficult? Well, the thing is that you've got to have a lot of pressure with your index finger, and you've also got to make sure that these smaller fingers, the pinky and ring finger, are in as optimal a position as possible. So in this situation, if we're playing a G chord, we'd want to have the pinky right next to the fret, the ring finger just above it, not too far back this way, sort of crammed up, and then the middle finger right next to the fret and the index finger right next to the fret to get that to sound right. Now, like I'd mentioned, the E-type chords are the most common. These chords that are the D-type, if you want to think of them as looking like a D chord, these are far less common. You'll very rarely see them. But I just wanted to show you the concept that any of these chords that you play down here, you could also play up here. If you happen to be playing one of these D-type chords, you'll have to know the notes on the 4th string. So in this situation, if we were going down to the 3rd fret, and we know that the 3rd fret on the 4th string is the note F, then we've got an F chord like that. But anyway, remember that you want to place the pinky and the ring fingers first with whichever of these kinds of bar chords you're playing, so that you'll get them in the optimal position and you'll be able to press hard enough. Because a lot of people struggle by placing the index finger first and then hoping that they can add the other fingers, and it's much more difficult that way. So make sure to place the smaller, weaker fingers first. And that's a good tip regardless of what you're playing. You always want to place the finger first that you're going to have the most trouble with. The finger that has the most control and the most coordination, you can worry about that at the end. So keep that in mind with whatever you're playing. Thanks for listening.